The topic today is essentially boxes. I've been a woodworker most of my life, and I'm primarily a furniture maker, and I want to deal with some specifics about boxes. One having to do with sequence, which can vary depending on the form. We can talk a lot about forms. I'd like to show you some examples of some of my boxes. Talk about the density of wood, working with end grain, which is something you're going to confront with boxes. Now, I'm assuming that when we say boxes, we're all in agreement here that its grain direction is parallel with the axis of rotation. Okay? And the reason for that is the top and the bottom will move together with hygroscopic movement, the expansion, contraction, which is kind of important. If you do a cross-grain box, sometimes you will get this locking quality to it because wood moves across the grain and it'll lock in if it's not aligned. So I have done those occasionally. You can get away with it with some very stable woods, but most of the time I'm assuming that when we're talking about boxes, we're talking about parallel to the axis of rotation. So could you get the camera in this area right here, please? And I'm going to maybe see if I can get some light on this as well. So. And I've got a variety of things. Some early production boxes that I didn't have a whole lot of turning, but this is one of them. This is just a little domed box. It's turned from a block. Part of my history is that, growing up in New Mexico, you probably noticed the lack of large hardwood forests, right? So I didn't get into green turning and larger stuff till much, much later. But I started working in shops when I was 14, and I started collecting bits and pieces of hardwoods, sometimes exotics, and that's kind of where I started. I had a very small lathe later on, a Vic Mark 100, which was a great lathe. But I was limited in thickness to mostly 2 inches or under. So this is a piece of 8-quarter walnut, and this is a piece of 4-quarter curly maple, and then it was just roughed out. These were actually set up for production. I used to do the American Craft Council shows, and this is a very, very early box that ended up in my mother's collection. But anyway, this is a small box made out of maple. This is probably, 40 years old maybe, and still fits. It's end grain here. So I got into doing a lot of textural stuff by experimenting. And the two primary things I'm going to show you today are chatter work, which you may have heard about. I don't use a commercial chatter tool because any tool is a chatter tool, depending on what conditions you put it under. And the other one is a spiral effect that has to do with a rotating tool.
Michael, for the new people here, you can tell them what a chatter tool is?
So a chatter tool...
Or what the effect is?
The effect is that most of the time what you're trying to do is use the tool rest to take the punch of the cutting action, right? And this is true of any lathe, including a metal lathe. Typically, those are not handheld tools. Those are something in a compound. And you want to reduce the amount of deflection that any tool takes from the force of the cutting action because you get a smoother surface quality. But with chatter work, you deliberately want the tool, or in some cases the workpiece, to vibrate. And it's essentially, if you can't fix it, you feature it. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper a little bit later on. I want to show you some prototypes that actually belong to a dear friend of mine who passed away a while ago. These are little boxes from a guy named Red Hollenbach that I ended up with. And these are just test pieces. They're in pine and little lids. And he was playing with form where he's undercutting these. So 3 legs and 4 legs. And
Michael?
This is a great way to go through, a great way to experiment here. My feeling is that after a certain point, cutting wood is really the easy part. It's design. And the things I struggle with most are proportion and form and things like that. So Red and I had long hours of conversation about design, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as a piece of this demonstration. So.
Why don't we try the next one without the light? Because I think the super contrast may be less good. We'll have to look, but I think we may see better with a broader
Okay, can you see that okay?
Yeah.
All right, oh, that's really quick. So this is a box I finished today, and this is one of the types of fit that I'm going to get into. This is also has a fair amount of texture on it as well. You get any
I can zoom
maxed?
in a little bit.
Any maxed? Yeah, so there's a little spiral detail there and on the top. And it's a suction fit, and there's actually this is where the light could help. Oh, you can see that. But there's actually a spiral in the bottom. This is might be hard to do. And we can talk about how that's done as well. So this is pretty good fit, and there's some tricks to this I'd be glad to share. That's just in maple, and the inlay is walnut. This is an old box. This is just a very simple Bubinga box, and still has a good tight fit. Whenever you do a grain match, you're going to be better off if you use a piece of wood where the grain is essentially vertical. It doesn't come off at an angle. You have a better chance of things matching. But a lot of what I think box design is about is the interfaces. So to me, it's better to make something look intentional. I have done boxes where the grain matched perfectly, and then the first time someone drops the lid, then you get a nick on there, and then you can see the difference in the top and bottom. So I tend not to go for that as much now. Let's see what else I got here. So a lot of what I got into, which is probably going to become obvious, is small boxes that dealt with parts, essentially one piece attached to another. So here's a couple of these. This is a spire, and there's one there as well. This one's got a little free ring on it. You see this? Yeah. Oop. Is that light too hot?
Yeah.
Try it.
That's
Okay. Anyway, this is a piece of ebony, and again, texture, and all that stuff. Tulip wood top, also tulip wood here. Sometimes the stuff that I didn't really like ended up with my family, so this was in my mom's collection, because I don't like the proportions of that one at all, personally, but let's see what else I got here. This is another one. It's a little bit later. And this one was an experiment in using a fit that used cork. I kind of abandoned that as well. These are part of a series I did called Spire Boxes, and there are a bunch of different parts that go together. So there's the body itself, there's the face that's got two plugs, there's the top here that's got this insert of cork, a Wenge disc, a riser, a little tiny satinwood bead, another riser. This was a wood called Chaktikok. It used to be this vibrant red, but it's faded. An inlay of the spiral, and then this little spire, finial, and then a little piece on the top. So, and I can show you some tricks about putting parts together in a very simple way where you can get perfectly fit tenons into perfectly drilled holes with no measuring. Okay. This is a little tiny box. Yeah. So this is about, what's this, about an inch in diameter, and it's got that spiral texture, which I'll also show you about. The lid here is blackwood, and it's threaded. And I think humidity sometimes affects these things. It does open, but this was actually a little memento for a friend of mine who was going on a trip, and it's got some red dirt from Jemez in it, sort of as a little reminder of New Mexico. This one's threaded as well, and this is olive wood. I do hand chasing, which I don't know if we can fit into today's topic, but I can show you a little bit about it. So that's olive wood and black wood, and again, the little free ring on there is fun. Let's see what else I got. Okay, so sometimes these little spires are a little fragile, and they can easily break, but this one doesn't have that problem because it's on a ball and socket joint. So I can show you more of that at some point. This is also threaded. Oh, come on. There we go. And a spiral in the bottom. So I know that this scale isn't going to appeal to everyone, But when I wanted to work with stuff where I didn't have to glue up blocks, so I'm just using the sizes of the scraps that I have. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, this is actually a favorite. This is a little burl box, and also threaded. And inside this, so you know, I see a lot of finials. If you've ever seen like Cindy Drose's work, everyone's got a little thing with like a spire that comes up, a little finial. It always comes to a point, and I wanted to kind of go the other way. So this one's flared out. It's opened up. Inside it here, how's your zoom? Can you get any closer?
Yep.
So inside this is a little boxwood spire, and there's 2 free rings on that. I have this good working relationship with my dentist, so I get dental tools and I reshape them. So sometimes I do little free rings on those. And it's protected inside, otherwise that would be very fragile, but it's inside the finial here, it's not going to break as much. So. Oh, this is a much older piece, also from my mother's collection. I didn't really like the proportions on this, but this is the kind of thing where, you know, I would draw something and say, well, I like this thing about the form, but it doesn't always translate to the material. This is just turned and then shaped. And I didn't bring the apparatus for this, but essentially this is carved away with the front roller of a belt sander. It's really fast. Basically, you just erase the wood. So you're not in there with carving tools or anything like that. It's a very gentle thing. You do have to watch your knuckles because it'll erase your knuckles as well. But I do a lot of this kind of forming where I start with something turned and then cut things away. And there's some images of that a little bit later on. Let's see. This is a piece that isn't quite finished, but it shows you some of the variety of things you can do with threaded lids. And that's more of a hollow piece, so talk about the technique for getting in here. This is just one piece of maple, and I still need to put a finial on that. And then, oh, this one is a little unusual in that I made a bunch of these in back in 2005. I started making these, maybe a little bit earlier. And I never sold these. These are actually as a thank you to a lot of people who helped me. I've been very fortunate. I've trained with some great turners. I did a residency at the Arrowmont School of Craft in 2001, 2002, and I got to work with David Ellsworth and Mike Mahoney and Ray Key and Del Stubbs and just all these incredible turners. And so what I would do is I would take a photo of them, and then inside here is a little lens. You can't put anything in the box, but if you look inside, it's a viewer, and you can hold it up to the light. The back of it's got a little piece of paper. It's a diffuser held in with an O-ring, and there's an image. It's a 35 millimeter slide that's got a circle punched out and then put in here. So you can take an image and basically make a little, you know, they used to sell these as keychains and things like that. I don't know if you remember those. A lot of people have these. Ben Fo's got one, John Jordan. I probably have got, I don't know, 25 or 30 of these things out here. Most of my teachers and also friends who I thought would appreciate the image. So I think that's it. I've got another box of parts here, and some of these are unrelated in terms of the topic for this evening, but I might be able to work in some of the stuff. A lot of it has to do with texture. Here's another one. A lot of these are demo boxes, or that's a threaded lid. You see okay? Yeah. Again, when you work on this scale, you want to cut as clean as possible so you don't have to use a lot of abrasives, because that dubs over the detail. And I am kind of fond of detail. These are some textures I'm going to show here. And actually a shadow on here might help show them a little better. So that's all chatter work. Let's see if we turn it right. There we go. This is a combination of chatter and embossing. This is just embossing. This is chatter work here as well. These are all end grain discs. You see okay?
I'm still not convinced that the bright light is helping.
Okay, I just thought the shadow contrast would help. Oh, you can see that. Okay, never mind. Let's see what else I got here. Yeah, so these are all textural things that I've done. Often I use wood that's kind of bland, and so a little contrast of texture I find interesting at times. This is all punch work done with leather punches. I didn't bring that apparatus, but you can kind of basically see what's going on. It's just indexing and leather punching. This is kind of a cool texture. This is called moire. And it's two overlapping series of lines. You can see that there's two centers here. I haven't put the light on just for a second. See it? So that would be an inlay. This is embossing with the spiral tool. What else? This is use of the spiral tool as well. This is a fluting thing. I brought the jig. I probably won't set it up on this because I don't think it fits this lathe. But that again, that's just indexing and using a 1/4 inch round nose bit in a router. This is what can be done with one of the wheels on the spiral tool. This is a series of free rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This over. So again, these are all dental tools that you can undercut things and then break the piece free while it's spinning. This is an old trick. Actually, they dug up this bowl out of a bog in Ireland, and they think it's at least 1,100 years old, and there was a free ring around the stem of it. So it's one of the oldest gee whiz things. This is the same thing used, except now I'm going with making openings from the fluting. So I'm getting in here with a curve tool and cutting until I get a ventilation there. These are forms that have been turned and then shaped abrasively. And so once you get your parts set up, you can put things in this. I don't think this fits right away, but here again is some texture. This one's actually part of a bigger experimentation about ball and socket joints. So this actually comes apart. It's threaded. This is boxwood, and there's 3 pieces to it. And I've done these on a lot of different scales. I've been building lamps and things that have articulating parts. You can also get into bent stuff like this. This is actually just bent in a microwave. And you can, if you turn the free ring on there, you know, it's, again, it's a gee whiz thing, but it's fun. Anyway, there's all kinds of stuff in here. A lot of these are rejects. Some of these are just demo pieces. But I'll leave this out. You can take a look through it. Any questions so far? Oh, there's one picture there.
Michael, you got one on the floor.
Yeah, thank you.
Foot.
Thanks. This is a texture that I'll probably demonstrate. And, you know, you've learned to cut really clean. I'm going to show you how to cut really rough and intentionally.
I'm really good at that.
Oh, you really? Yeah. Anyway, there's all kinds of bits and pieces in there. Some of you have seen this before, and I just kind of keep adding to the collection and stuff. I've noticed, though, I share a shop right now with a friend of mine in Corrales, and he's got grandsons. And I made the mistake of showing this box to them, and they've been stealing things. So it's fine with me, but essentially, all right, away. So I guess part of what I'm going to focus on here today as well is working on a small scale, because the rules change a little bit in that the way you grip the tool and the way you move and the nuances of lathe adjustment are all important. I've been teaching for quite a while, and the thing about teaching is if you really want to know something well, get up in front of a group of people and pretend you know what you're doing. Because you will learn an enormous amount. I taught out at the community college for 10 years, and I've taught all over the country, and I've had some really great experiences and some very humbling experiences. which I might have this evening as well. I think the workshop is a humbling place, and the nature of subtractive work, as we all know, it's easy to make it smaller, hard to make it bigger, right? So at this scale, I heard someone, you sir, this evening, what was your comment about scale, sir?
So the smaller the scale, the more precise you have to be.
There it is. Right. So precision is always a relative thing. There's a relative accuracy. Right? It used to be that if you're a framer, there was an expression I used to hear on crews where they'd say, "That's within half a Hershey bar," and that would be fine, which means plus and minus eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, close enough for government work is an expression you'd hear. So with boxes, there's several different fits I want to talk about. So there's the basic loose fit, and I think a couple of these boxes, like this is definitely a loose fit. You pick up the lid and the base stays on the table. Okay? That's the first fit that you learn to do. The second one is snug fit, which means that you pick up the box and as you're going to show someone, the bottom drops off onto the concrete. That used to happen a lot when I was doing craft shows. So I stopped doing that fit. Then there's the long tenon air fit, which would be that box I showed you that had the snug, where is it? This one. So that's what I call an air fit. You can actually feel the air come out of it, and so the lid stays on, and you have to deliberately pull it off. And then there's a snap fit. That's similar to this, except it's a shorter tenon, and it actually has an undercut that grips. And it is also often the cause of our next one, which is the one-time fit. You put the lid on, and it doesn't come off. And I've had this happen sometimes on simple boxes. There is a trick. If it's a function of, whenever you remove the interior of any piece of wood, you're getting into slightly different moisture content from the core. And so you might get slight shrinkage. This happens on the lid, in which case it might grip and you can't get it open. I once had a windfall, and I put a $100 bill into a little container that I turned as a thank you for someone who really helped me out. And there was enough moisture in the bill that made it swell and I couldn't get it open. But the trick is, put it in your freezer, because most freezers have a dehumidifier. And so the person couldn't open it till like the next day. But has anyone else ever had that happen where a box locks up and you can't open it? Right. And then there is the what I call the split fit, which means you're trying to put it on and it just splits the lid. So that one and the one-time fit are not desirable, but I want to talk a little bit about how to sneak up on a good fit. So I'm going to rough out a box blank. I'm going to turn tenons on both sides. I'm going to put the chuck on the lathe and then part off. I'm going to detail the bottom and give a real quick introduction to chatter work. I'll part off the bottom and then I'll cut the underside of the lid, which I always do first. So then I can fit the tenon, which I typically do on the bottom. Right. Some people put a tenon on the top. It really depends on the design, but we'll get into that once I get through this.
So should I be back there with the camera where I can see the tool and the tool rest? Or where would you like me to be?
Stay where you are and zoom in right here and see where we are. I think it's going to be most of it right there.
Okay.
But these are the people you need to please. I'm going to just ignore what you're doing. So if you get comments from them, or bribes. Now, I also want to say that I don't do my best work in demos ever. I've been turning over 50 years, so I've developed some opinions. As you know, among wood turners, there's no shortage of opinions. In fact, you can get extra if you want. So I work on a different kind of lathe that's a little different proportions, and I have my methods of doing things. I have a rack above my lathe where my tools all rack. You'll probably notice that a lot of these tools, not all of them, but most of them, are PVC handles, and there was a reason for this. I was doing a lot of traveling. I've done over 100 clubs around the US, Canada, and England, and so I would take the cutter off and put it inside here. It's much lighter weight when you're trying to get on a plane with a 50-pound limit, and try not to fly with a chuck either. Makes people nervous. They think you're a terrorist. So, they're wrapped about here. I'm going to, as things come to mind, I'll bring your attention to what I think are some of the variables that we all contend with. And one of the big ones is stance, where you stand. Now, you see all kinds of videos on YouTube, and a lot of people are promoting things, instructional videos, and I want you to be careful about what you watch. In fact, I would recommend that you go to the American Association of Woodturners website. They have a great series of links, and all of those videos have been checked for clarity and safety and kind of weeding out the stupid things. There's a lot of people on YouTube who have enormous confidence and no clue. And I've seen some really stupid things happen there. So it's not just danger, it's also people not understanding cutting dynamics. And to me, cutting dynamics is a really big part of this. And we can get into some of that minutia. But the lathe, in my estimation, is really essentially, it's a rotating vise. And turning is carving. So if you don't know about grain direction, then all you're doing is barbarian activity. And especially with some of the newer carbide tools that people, they don't have bevels, so they don't, you can't get surface quality. We're turning for two things. We're turning for form, right? All the technique is in service to form, but we're also turning for surface quality. Because who here likes the sand? See, right? So I'm always going to go for surface quality, and I know how to get that depending on the application of the tools. So shut up and turn. So the first thing is, nothing on your body moves in a straight line. So even this short distance here, which is a straight line, if I keep my butt in one place and I try to turn with my arms only, I'm going to get a curve. Because everything on your body swings a radius. So if you don't shift your weight here, this is a longer radius. It approximates a straight line. And that way I'm not turning with my arms. My upper body doesn't move. I'm going to come in, I find the bevel here. Use a very narrow level valve. But it's this movement here that makes a difference. Anytime you have a cutting edge that is parallel with the grain, you get the same characteristic. You get a cross-grain shaving, quick removal of the material, and a bad surface. So to improve the quality of that, all I have to do is take that cutting edge and turn it at 45, and now it's going to shear. And I'm going to use the bevel here on the surface of the wood to float it. And you can actually see the shine on the wood, and that's just because I understand the cutting dynamics, and I can use the surface of the wood to support the cut. So I'm not scraping, I'm shearing, and there's a big difference there in the surface quality. This is walnut here, okay. I'm going to prepare this for being held in a chuck, and I always turn a tenon, a stepped tenon, because I want the little step to sit on the top of the chuck jaws to give it more stability. You do it on both sides. This is the Gadon. This particular tool is something I learned about from a fabulous turner in France named Jean-Francois Escolet. He's like one of the best ever, and a very funny man, and does wild stuff, a lot of multi-axis stuff. He also runs an amazing school in France. And I ran across him at Aeromont a couple times, took some classes with him. So you'll notice that that's a single bevel tool, and the bevel is up, it's not down. Knockout rod here. Here it is. The nice thing about working on the same lathe all the time is that you get to where it's just, you get your systems for where things go, and it's just a natural thing. I keep my knockout rod right here. So it's in, it's out, it's back. I don't have to think about it. My goal, as I get more and more organized, is for the tools to essentially disappear. I'm not focused on tools, I'm just putting all my energy into turning. Until someone borrows something. This is the chuck I'm going to use. I like this particular brand of chuck. This is a one-way chuck, and it's a scroll chuck. But a couple things I like about it is the stoutness of the key. And on a one-way lathe, I have a very stout pin that is strong enough that if I really knock this here, I can get that shoulder-to-shoulder contact of the back of the insert onto the spindle. Never buy a lathe that doesn't